All right, so get this. Today we're diving into something uh, pretty massive. It's a question it's sparked a ton of debate. What if we planted, get this, 1 trillion trees?
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking a third of all the trees on Earth. I mean, can you even picture that?
It's hard to wrap your head around, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a pretty colossal idea. So is it brilliant? Totally bonkers. Or maybe somewhere in between. That's what we're here to figure out.
You know, it's fascinating how this idea really seems to capture people's imaginations. There's something, I don't know, almost emotional about planting a tree.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's this tangible way to give back,
Yeah, yeah. It feels hopeful almost, like you're making a difference.
Exactly. And maybe even a little bit heroic.
Totally, like in that YouTube video, what if we planted 1 trillion trees? They talk about how all those trees could absorb a huge amount of CO2.
Right.
Like potentially buy us a decade to deal with all the pollution.
Yeah, to really figure things out.
I mean, who wouldn't want that extra time?
And there's that other video, what if everyone planted a tree on their birthday?
Oh, yeah, that was really interesting.
It makes it personal, It's not just this big abstract thing anymore.
Right.
It's something you can actually do.
Exactly. But then you have folks like, well, Bill Gates, coming out and saying mass tree planting is, and I quote, complete nonsense.
Yeah, that's definitely a different perspective.
Bit of a reality check, maybe.
It is, and the Zadika article actually goes into his reasoning. Gates argues that essentially focusing on trees distracts us from the core issue,
Which is?
cutting emissions at the source.
Oh.
They compare it to, imagine a smoker trying to, I don't know, offset their habit with a healthy diet.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, it doesn't address the underlying problem.
So we've got this clash between, I guess, feel-good action and maybe a more pragmatic viewpoint. But what about the science itself? Does it back up this trillion-tree idea?
Well, there's this Climatica article that raises a really compelling point. It challenges this idea that Earth should just be one giant forest.
All right.
It reminds us that grasslands and savannas, they're incredible ecosystems too.
Well, they have their own value.
Absolutely. They're vital for biodiversity, for their unique roles.
So it's more nuanced than just saying trees good, everything else bad.
Exactly. Trees are vital, but they're not this magical fix,
Right.
The article points out that it takes, decades for a newly planted forest to become a real carbon sink.
Oh, so it's not an instant solution.
Not at all. And there's also the risk that these plantations could be abandoned.
And then what?
Well, they become vulnerable to fires, which releases all that carbon back into the atmosphere.
Yikes. So it could backfire, literally.
Yeah, it's a real concern.
Okay, so aside from the trees versus other ecosystems debate, are there other potential downsides to consider?
Yeah, a few things pop up both in the videos and the Climatica article, mainly around unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, for example, did you know that massive shifts in vegetation can actually change local climates?
Wait, really?
And even energy balances.
You mean like planting trees could actually make some places warmer?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know.
It does.
But it comes down to how different types of vegetation, they reflect and absorb sunlight differently.
Ah, I see.
And then there's the impact on air quality.
Especially in urban areas, right?
Exactly.
I feel like I read something about that.
What if everyone planted a tree on their birthday? Video mentioned something about VOCs.
VOCs, right?
Volatile organic compounds.
What are those exactly?
They're chemicals released by trees, mostly harmless in small amounts, but high concentrations can contribute to smog and respiratory problems.
So even natural processes can have side effects.
Especially when we try to, manipulate them on a massive scale.
Okay, so unintended consequences are a big red flag.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic here. Even if we wanted to plant 1 trillion trees, wouldn't that just be a logistical nightmare?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, remember that YouTube video, the one that mentioned needing an area twice the size of the United States?
Yeah, that's just an astronomical amount of land.
Where would we even find it?
And who would manage it all?
Good point. And that same video talked about potential conflicts over land use. Like, imagine trying to convince farmers to give up their fields for trees.
It's a tough sell.
Yeah, it'd be a recipe for tension.
And even if we could overcome those hurdles, the Climatica article reminds us that biodiversity is complex. Replanted forests, they might not reach the same level of species richness as natural ones for decades.
Really? That long?
Maybe even centuries.
Wow.
It's not just about planting trees, it's about rebuilding entire ecosystems.
So maybe this trillion tree idea is more of a thought experiment than a practical solution. Does that mean we're doomed to a hotter planet? Hopefully not. I mean, we started off asking, can planting a trillion trees really fight climate change? And the answer seems to be, well, way more complicated than just a yes or no.
Yeah, for sure.
What we're seeing is that trees, they're important, for sure. But they're just one piece of this whole puzzle. Focusing only on planting trees, it might actually make us miss other solutions.
Exactly. It's about seeing the bigger picture.
So if planting trees isn't some, like, magic bullet, what are some of those other solutions? Where should we be putting our energy?
All the stuff we've looked at, it actually points to some pretty interesting alternatives. For starters, all of them, they really emphasize protecting what we already have, reducing deforestation. That's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, it seems kind of counterproductive to plant new trees while we're still cutting down so many existing ones.
Right, and we need to think about sustainable forestry. It's not just about the number of trees, it's about the quality of the ecosystems they're part of.
Ah, okay.
We need healthy, diverse forests.
Makes sense.
Forests that can support all sorts of species.
So it's about working with nature, not just trying to, like, impose our own ideas.
Exactly. And remember that YouTube video that mentioned tree planting drones?
Oh, yeah, that was pretty cool.
That kind of tech, it could be really helpful for scaling up reforestation, making it more efficient, minimizing land conflicts.
It's amazing how technology can play a role. When I saw those drones, I thought, is this a sci-fi movie? But then it also made me think, are we maybe putting too much faith in technology? Especially when some of those solutions, they might be years away from being actually useful.
That's a great point, and it's something we really need to consider. Technology, it can be an amazing tool, but it's not a substitute for dealing with the root causes of climate change.
Like our reliance on fossil fuels.
Exactly. We can't just rely on tech to fix everything.
Right, it's not a magic wand.
And while we're talking about tech, there's all this buzz around carbon capture and storage.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
The Zatica article mentioned it briefly. There's this company, Climeworks, they're already pulling CO2 directly from the air.
Wow, that sounds incredible, like straight out of the future.
It does, but it's important to remember these technologies, they're still in the early stages. They're expensive, they need a lot of energy, and there are a lot of logistical challenges.
So not a quick fix.
Definitely not, but I think it's important to keep investing in research and development. It has the potential to be really impactful.
It does seem promising.
And while we're talking about impact, let's not forget about individual action.
Oh, right.
It's easy to feel like our choices don't really matter, you know?
I get that. Like, what difference can one person really make?
I hear you, but remember, collective action, it's made up of millions of individual choices. Things like reducing our own carbon footprint, choosing sustainable products.
Supporting businesses that care about the environment?
Exactly. All those things, they add up.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And individual action, it's not just about changing our own habits. It's also about using our voices, advocating for bigger changes. We need to elect leaders who prioritize climate action.
Hold corporations accountable.
Exactly. Speaking of staying informed and engaged, what are some things our listeners can do?
Yeah, what can people actually do to make a difference?
There are so many ways to get involved. Stay informed, read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, watch documentaries, talk to your friends and family about climate change.
Support organizations working on solutions.
And don't underestimate the power of your vote.
That's so true. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the problem. Like, where do we even begin?
I know, but even small actions, they can create ripple effects.
They can, and this deep dive, it wasn't meant to be like the final word on climate change, more like a starting point.
Yeah, a way to spark curiosity, to encourage everyone to keep learning and exploring.
It definitely did that for me.
It did.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to leave with?
Well, first, I hope they come away with a better understanding of just how complex climate change is. There are no easy answers, no magic solutions. Second, I hope they feel empowered, knowing that there are many paths forward. We need a multi-pronged approach, combining tech, policy change, individual action. And finally, I hope they're inspired to keep exploring these issues, having those important conversations about how we can create a sustainable future.
I love that it's a call to action, but it's also a reminder that we're in this together.
Yeah, it's a collective effort for sure. And going back to that trillion tree idea, even if it's not like the solution, it does get people thinking about nature differently,
I totally agree.
Starts conversations.
Yeah, and it highlights this really important point. We can't oversimplify things, especially with an issue as complex as climate change.
Right.
It's connected to so many other things: biodiversity loss, poverty, food security.
Right.
The solutions have to be multifaceted. That reminds me, the Climatica article talked about ecosystem restoration. Like, it's not just about planting any tree, it's about restoring the whole web of life that makes a forest, well, a forest.
Exactly. We have to think bigger than just counting trees. We need resilient ecosystems. And that takes a much deeper understanding of each region, each community.
So a one-size-fits-all approach won't work.
Nope, what works in a rainforest won't work in a grassland.
Makes sense.
The solutions, they have to be tailored to the specific place, and that means incorporating traditional ecological knowledge, working with indigenous communities.
That's a crucial point for sure. And it really highlights how important it is to listen to different voices, different perspectives.
Absolutely, and it reminds us that climate change, it's not just a scientific problem or a technological one. It's a social and political challenge, too.
Right, it's all connected.
We have to address inequality, injustice, all these things that are often intertwined with environmental issues.
So coming full circle, back to our original question, what if we planted 1,000,000,000,000 trees? It might not be the ultimate solution, but it's definitely a powerful symbol.
It is.
It's a symbol of our desire to, well, to heal the planet.
I love that. It's a beautiful way to put it. And it's really encouraging to see how much this idea has resonated with people. It shows that there's this real drive to do something.
Yeah, a desire to be part of the solution.
Exactly.
And that gives me hope. So for our listeners out there, the ones who are fired up and ready to make a difference, what's the most important thing they can do?
Stay curious, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to speak up. We need everyone on board to tackle this, whether it's planting a tree in your backyard, supporting a local organization, or advocating for policy change. Every action matters.
Those are some great words to end on. This deep dive, it's been quite a journey.
It has.
Through forests, scientific debates, even futuristic technology.
I hope our listeners have come away with a renewed sense of wonder about the natural world and a deeper understanding of the challenges we face.
I think they have. And as we wrap up our look at this trillion tree idea, I'm left with one final question. If you had unlimited resources, what one area would you focus on to create a truly sustainable future? Think about it, dear listeners, and let us know what you think. Until next time, keep diving deep and remember, every action, no matter how small, can make a difference.